Well, hello to you. And, well, I think it's safe to say with regret, I say good evening to you because it's the emergency sports scene talking that we all feared. I think we all hoped and thought it wouldn't come to this, but some devastating news in the last half hour concerning Derby County and administration. We'll take your calls, we'll hear your thoughts, we'll talk to football finance expert Kieran Maguire in a moment to get a better idea of what this all means now for Derby moving forward, what it means in terms of points deductions, because we're not just talking the penalty for administration. We know there are still the points deductions looming over Derby for breaches of financial fair play. What does it mean for tickets? What does it mean for the club as a whole? We'll get to Kieran in a moment. Ed Dawes is with us as well, our Rams commentator. Ed, evening to you. I suppose we should start with the statement because it is lengthy. There are some very interesting things in it. So the floor is yours. Read us what has been said tonight.
Well, Chris, I mean, this story started. I got a hint of this just after 7:00 this evening, and there was some sort of strange graphic I noticed on LinkedIn from a gentleman, and then sort of chased it up and followed it through, and it looked legit. Where everything else we've had on social media from various parties hasn't looked legit. So I contacted the club, and eventually I got a response, and the statement is as follows. Derby County Football Club today announced that the club, the ultimate holding company of the group, and all of the subsidiary companies have filed notices of intention to appoint administrators. The action was made necessary by a number of developments. Last week, it became clear that the process which has been underway to identify a purchaser for the club likely would not be productive over the near term, despite the number of negotiations with credible parties. Because of the COVID-19 pandemic has had a severe impact on revenues and profits of all its businesses, the club has been unable to service its day-to-day financial obligations. The directors had no choice but to make the tough decision to take its action and protect the club. The irony is that the club's financial forecasts show the emergence of a financially sustainable picture. Absent the COVID-19 pandemic, we undoubtedly would have been able to trade through. So there, it's talking about COVID, Chris, and putting a lot of blame on the pandemic and subsequently what has happened. It continues. However, the impact of COVID-19 pandemic and the unpredictability it has created represents too much of a strain. As the COVID-19 pandemic and lockdown tightened their grip, the club's revenues and cash flow took a circa £20 million hit. This season, COVID-19 has continued to have a negative effect on the club's revenues, and like other sectors, football has been able to only marginally reduce its cost base, with the majority of outgoings being associated with playing staff who obviously could not be furloughed. It's widely known that we had significantly reduced our wage bill, but the major benefit of these reductions were not going to take effect until this season. It continues. The COVID-19 lockdown also meant that we were unable to have face-to-face meetings with a number of potential purchasers who could not visit the stadium or training ground. A planned sale of the club and stadium was due to close in January 2020. That collapsed when the EFL was coerced into challenging the stadium sale transaction, a charge that would be dismissed some 9 months later. The ongoing litigation and charges in regard to the profit and sustainability regulations and the protracted timetable for this to reach a resolution added further uncertainty and made negotiations challenging. These issues also led the EFL to preclude the club from drawing down circa £8.3 million of financial assistance, as was made available to all other Championship clubs in respect of settling PAYE liabilities, further aggravating cash flow and the ability to meet financial obligations. Even today, we await the EFL's response to these matters. This response is important to the club, its supporters, and also to any prospective purchaser of the club. We wish to thank our supporters, staff, and especially our creditors who have sought to help through the pandemic while we have worked to find a purchaser. The club's owner has provided substantial funding throughout this period, even as the process has been underway since June 2019 to find a buyer. We are especially grateful to MSD Partners, who have been hugely supportive and have provided additional financial assistance this year, going far beyond the original loan it provided in August 2020. We know this situation will raise concerns among our supporters. The club respectfully asks that our supporters continue to show their support, especially to the playing staff under Wayne Rooney and our employees who have all been outstanding during these difficult times. The ongoing support in turn will be instrumental as we seek to find a new owner to take the club forward. We appeal to the EFL to now assist the club and the administrators in any way they can in the effort to find a purchaser. We cannot stress enough how devastating it is to be forced into this position. We all, the owner, the members of the board and our staff, are true Derby County supporters. We will continue our work under the stewardship of the administrators to help facilitate their process and their effort to find a purchaser. And finally, once administrators have been appointed in the coming days, it will be customary for them to communicate with staff and supporters about timescales and processes to seek a purchaser and address creditor concerns. It's a long statement, Chris. It covers everything in a nutshell. It blames the pandemic. It blames the situation. But of course, fans will look at that statement today and they will think, well, Derby County have been spending a lot in the last decade. They've signed players who potentially were overpriced. There have been some big wages. There have always been massive wage cuts. Players have been sold. Players have been sold for less than their worth or less than they were signed for. Kieran can go into that in a moment. But I mean, this is the end game for what has been at least 6 years of questionable management of a business and a football club. And it's very questionable that it's come to this. Big Derby fans have been through this in '83. They've been through it under Maxwell, but they've not seen the club put into administration by an ownership. And it's a very sad day for the club and supporters. And I'm sure they've got a lot to say.
I'm sure they have. Ed, thank you for now. We'll come back to you, but take a breather because that was a very lengthy statement. And as you say, lots of blame put around the place, but very little retrospection, I'd suggest, over the last however many years or so. Kieran Maguire is with us, football finance expert. Kieran, evening to you. And, it's normally at this point, I'd say something like, well, here you are again, and you deserve your own slot on this programme because you're here so often. But we're speaking in very, very grave terms now, aren't we? So first of all, we'll get into the nuances of the statement because there's so much to go through. But what does this mean for Derby County? What does this mean in terms of where they stand in the league? What does this mean in terms of where they stand as a football club and a business currently?
Well, if a football club goes into administration under EFL rules, there's an automatic 12-point penalty that would be applied to the club. And the administrators will take over the day-to-day running of Derby County until new owners are found. They can't sell the club for at least 28 days because they've got to give the supporters group time to potentially put together a consortium to buy out, because this is all part of the EFL going forwards, and I think that's got to be applauded. Then once they come out of administration, the MSD holdings would have to be paid in full. HMRC are now what's referred to as a preferential creditor, so they would have to be paid in full for outstanding taxes which are owed, and then the remaining creditors would have to get at least 25% of what's owed to them. If they fail to do that, I think it's within 2 years, then there would be a further 15-point penalty. So, and again, once they're outside of administration, they would be subject to a business plan and a very strict embargo from the EFL. So the EFL take this very seriously indeed, and it's a tragic position. You and I don't want to be having this conversation, do we?
Well, no, quite. Absolutely not. And no Derby County fan wants to have this conversation. I dare say fans of lots of other clubs have huge sympathy as well. Of all the rivalries, that something like this, when it's completely out of the fans' control as well, is just incredibly, incredibly hard to take. What does this mean then for instance, staff members at Derby County, who I'm sure will be very worried about today's events? And what about those that maybe are owed money from Derby County, that are small businesses that may well be losing out huge amounts of money as far as they're concerned?
Well, the first thing that the administrators will do is they will take stock and they will be writing to all creditors of Derby County Football Club, Sevco 5112, all of the other companies involved, to try to establish the amounts which are due. And those will be frozen. So we don't know whether they will get any money, but it certainly would be a lengthy exercise, and I think it's highly unlikely that they'll get 100% of what is due to them. With regards to staff, the administrators, their first objective will be trying to work out how the September pay packets can be paid. The club will have received some money from gate receipts. I don't know the position with regards to season ticket sales. I know that there were issues taking place over the summer, which the club appeared to be putting into the blaming COVID for being unable to sell season tickets. I know that was a couple of months ago. I don't know how things have progressed with regards to that. So the administrators will be looking to cut costs, and that's management speak for identifying if they can cut back on payroll, and that's going to mean potentially people are going to lose jobs. It's unlikely to be on the playing side of things because players have fixed contracts, but other members of staff, if you take a look to see what happened with the administration of Wigan, there were significant redundancies taking place there.
Yeah. And of course, this is all on top of Derby's battle with the EFL. So we're not talking minus 12 points. If the 9-point deduction is rumoured, then you're up to minus 21 points. There's still a suspended 3-point deduction should Derby fail to pay players again. I'm not sure what happens with that. We're talking about a real seminal moment, it feels like, in Derby County's history, because ironically, Wayne Rooney, 7-8 hours ago, was telling us that he felt 9 points was achievable to get out of relegation, but anything more than that is tough. But when you're looking at that number of points, I think we all remember Luton, who got minus 30 points for their
that's correct
for their drop into administration. It does feel that this is quite a huge moment in this football club's history.
Yes, it is. I mean, but the most important thing is that whatever happens, that there is a Derby County still to support at the end of this. If you talk to people whose clubs have gone into administration, and clearly, we had Wigan last year, and they have turned a corner. Things are starting to improve. If you talk to Leicester City went on to win the Premier League. Crystal Palace went into administration twice, and they're now in the Premier League. So it is not the end. It's going to be a very tough period of time. And there is still matches to watch, and there is still that emotional investment and love of the club, which comes from the fans to the football club. And I think you got to separate the football club from its owners and executives, who from afar appear to have really let everybody else down. The profligate expenditure since Mel Morris took over. I'm looking at figures here which are showing that wages effectively trebled from £16 million in 2014 to 47 by 2018. The club should not have been run as a vanity exercise for one individual.
Kieran, there are so many questions that I keep bursting into my head, including the stadium. What happens to Pride Park now? Because I know that that's not part of the club, but it's owned by one of Mel Morris's companies. Has that gone into administration? What happens to that? Does that go to MSD, who have a say in all of this? And also, when it comes now to moving forward for Derby, how attractive a proposition is the club at the moment? Yes, when it's in administration, I'm sure price obviously drops, but it doesn't feel, because of the financial complexities, it doesn't feel a particularly attractive proposition at the moment.
Well, with regards to the stadium, again, if we go back to the press release from the club, it also says that the ultimate holding company of the group is going into administration as well. So that means that I think is it called Gelor 5 something. That company appears to be going into administration. The assets of the group, which will include the stadium, training facilities, all of the office equipment, that will be valued by the administrators' valuers along with the players. I think it's fair to say that any players that can be sold in the January window, if the club is still in administration, are likely to be sold in order to provide additional cash flow. But in an ideal world, we will have new owners by that stage. Is Derby County an attractive proposition for investors? Yes, it is. It's got a relatively new stadium. It's got a very committed fan base, and I think realistically, there's a very high chance of it being in League One next season. But League One is a division which is competitive, but you would expect Derby to be towards the top of the table there. So I think new prospective owners won't be fully put off. The accusations made by the club that COVID prevented them from having face-to-face sale discussions, that they don't wash with me, because we've seen Ipswich Town and Sunderland and other clubs move to new ownership during COVID. So I think there's an awful lot of blame and little responsibility being taken as far as this statement is concerned. But can the club be sold? Yes. It's a case of the administrators need to be able to extract a sufficient price for it to allow that 25% of unsecured creditors to be paid, so that the prospect of a further 15 points deduction in a further 2 years, which won't be particularly palatable to new owners, can be addressed. Although the owners themselves, in theory, could pay off those creditors if necessary. But every pound they have to pay to somebody else is £1 less going to the administrators, and that means where does this leave MSD Holdings? We cannot be too certain.
Last couple, Kieran, and then I want to open it up to the Derby fans who are understandably getting in touch in their numbers. There's a paragraph in the statement that says these issues also led to the EFL to preclude the club from drawing down circa £8.3 million of financial assistance, as was made available to all other Championship clubs in respect of settling PAYE liabilities, further aggravating our cash flow and ability to meet our financial obligations. Now, we mentioned that there is a lot of blame in this statement, and there seems to be another slant at the English Football League. Can you just explain a little bit about what that is? Because that seems an awful lot of money to be not allowed for Derby, not given to Derby County, when it has been made available to all other Championship clubs.
Well, what happened was that last year the EFL managed to arrange a loan, and this was effectively underwritten by the Premier League, in which they were able to borrow money from a lender and then pass that on to clubs to allow clubs to pay PAYE and national insurance contributions during lockdown when the pay delay scheme stopped. So only a handful of clubs in the Championship actually took that up. So to say that it was available to all, but there were conditions attached. And I suspect that some of those conditions may have involved some of the things which the Derby County Board were reluctant to do, which was to publish their accounts for the last 2 years. And other commitments. So it was a loan which had strings attached, and it looks as if those conditions were too onerous as far as Mel Morris and Stephen Pearson, the board, were concerned.
And finally, Kieran, can you give us just a little timeline of what might happen over the next month? I mean, you say there's 28 days before they can sell the club to allow supporters perhaps to put something together. But in terms of the EFL and the remaining points deductions there, what is your hunch? Is it going to be one fell swoop of right, bang, there's your point deduction and off you go? Or do you anticipate this is going to be quite a protracted few months?
Well, I think it's absolutely essential for whoever takes over Derby County to have complete clarity with regards to what they are inheriting. Are they acquiring a club with a 12 points deduction, or are they acquiring a club with a 21 or potentially even 24 if there were issues in terms of wages? So the administrators, they will be talking to the EFL, because when they put together their sale brochure, they have a legal obligation to be transparent to prospective owners, and therefore they've got to say, this is what you're buying and this is what you're inheriting in terms of points. So I would suspect that the EFL, and who want to resolve this, that they've wanted to get this sorted for some time. It's the club which has been dragging its heels, will talk to the administrators, and that could be a conversation which could be dealt with relatively quickly, and then we get clarity. That then we know exactly what the position is with regards to Derby's points, and that will have an impact upon the price potentially payable by a new owner.
Kieran, really appreciate it. We shall see what develops over the coming days, weeks and months. But as ever, thank you for putting it into a little bit of context for us and explaining in a bit more detail what this means for Derby County. And I dare say we shall speak again very soon. Kieran Maguire there, football finance expert. Over to you then. 0800 145 6161. That is a free phone number. 81333. Derby at the front of your message, at BBC Derby Sport on Twitter, reacting to the breaking and devastating news this evening that Derby County Football Club is heading into administration. Let's kick off with Lisa. Lisa, evening to you.
I'm trying to compose myself, Chris, because I've been in tears. It's heartbreaking news.
Yeah, I can fully appreciate that. Just try and put into words the emotions you're feeling at the moment.
Well, I think it says it all, and I can hardly talk. It's I'm a 56-year-old woman, Chris, and I followed Derby County all my life, since I was 4. For this to be happening to the football club that, I spent a lot of money over the years, going home and away, to let the football club, the statue of Derby County, get into this mess. There's only one person to blame, and I've tried to stick up for Mal over the years, because I speak to him a lot and his wife Sharon, but this is unacceptable. To rip the heart out of a football club that we all love. It's heartbreaking. I'm sure there's other fans out there that feel the same as me. It should never have come to this, Chris. I'm heartbroken. The football club, Derby County, we're a one city football club, and everybody supports the club, gets behind the club. We're loyal supporters. We've been through bad times before, but this has ripped the heart and soul out of the football club. And like I've said, there's only one person to blame for this, and I'll never forgive him for what he's done. I've been eternally grateful for what he did with the academy and everything else, but to let the club get into a situation like this, and I know COVID hasn't happened, it's unacceptable, it's unforgiving, and will we come back from this? As a fan base, we will back this club 100%. We will back Wayne Rooney, we will back the players, it's not their fault. We will be there in our numbers tomorrow, getting behind the team. And if we have to protest, I'm sorry, I'm going to be part of that protest, because I love the football club and we should not be in this position. It's shameful.
What do you think the atmosphere will be like tomorrow, Lisa? There is a game to play, and it's going to be, I'd suggest, a very strange dynamic, certainly early on, knowing what has happened 24, 48 hours earlier.
Look, I think when the players cross that white line, as we have done since the start of the season, because everybody's written us off, we've galvanised as a football club, as a fan base, as a manager and as a players. We've all tried to let the off-field stuff happen, but I've been to every home and away game, I've missed one away game. We're backing the players, we're backing Wayne Rooney. I feel for the man. He's had such a lot to contend with. So I think we will get behind him and the players, because they need our support. We're going to get a massive point deduction here. It's inevitable that we'll go down, but what we don't want is to go down the league and down again, because to come back from that, it'll be so difficult. It'll be toxic before kick-off, it'll be toxic afterwards, but through the game I think we'll be back in the team.
Ed Dawes is still with us, and actually Kieran is still with us. I wrote him off far too early. He's remaining with us just in case more questions emerge that we can't answer, and Kieran can. But Ed, you're obviously a BBC Radio Derby employee, but we know that you're Derby through and through. just try and put into context what this means for the not just the city but the area and the worldwide Rams. We know it's a hugely popular club. It has so many supporters. What will this mean for the community, for the Rams fans?
Well, I think Lisa's voice sums it up, doesn't it? It's cracking, it's upset, it's emotional. But Lisa and the fans will know that the fact that there is a Derby County in any form to kick a ball around at Pride Park, then that's the most important thing. It doesn't matter what division it's in or how it gets there. As long as they can put a team out and play football, then people will work their butts off in the week and spend their money at wherever they play on a Saturday. That's the most important thing. That is what you do when you follow a football team. If the football team plays football, you go and watch it. This is a total mess. It's an unforgivable mess. And there are, I guess, two people who have to stand up and take responsibility and have to come and put their head above the parapet and answer questions, because the silence has been going on for a very long time and the fans want answers. And the fact that they invest their hearts, their wallets and their souls in their football club, and it's run like this to this extent, and they don't get answers, that's unforgivable. And as Lisa said, Derby could end up with a minus 21 point deduction, which would take them down. Obviously, any points deduction would take them down. But on top of that, they would have what I think is a 2-year transfer embargo for administration, which means that the possibility what Lisa talks about of getting relegated again could happen. So this is an unholy mess, which we need answers. We've been asking for answers for months, but we've been straight batted or ignored. And it's fine. It's time the answers came with not a statement blaming COVID, but a statement as to why there are so many different companies involved in Derby County, owning Derby County, why it got to the stage where the biggest asset the club had, apart from the supporters, was sold to someone else, and why it's come to this. It's an utter mess, and the fans will not cope tomorrow, because if it goes wrong on the field, it'll go wrong with the voices from the stands and outside the stadium. And to be fair, you'd expect that, because it's got to the point where it is end game, and the end game needs to be addressed.
Lisa, that has to be the next step, doesn't it? Because we have been asking and waiting and trying to get any form of communication with the football club, and it's come to this sad day for the Rams. How frustrating, how angry, how disappointing that it's come to this, and we've had a wall of silence for the last however many months and years.
It's been disgusting. The way that the fans have been treated is unforgivable. The ticketing situation, there's no ticket office, there's been no phone line, there's been no communication. The club don't deserve such a loyal fan base that we are at Derby County. I have never known anything like it since I've been following the club. It's like sticking the fingers up at you. And let's not forget, without us fans supporting Derby County, there would be no Derby County. Mel Morris needs to be eternally grateful for the fan base that he's had over the years, the money that we've put into the club. It's appalling. I just think I never expected the fans to be treated like this, and like I've said, Chris, it's unforgivable. And I feel like somebody rang me up and told me a family member's just passed away. I don't think I'd be as. That's what it feels like, because Derby County is a massive part of my life, as it is a lot of other people's. And you live and breathe for your football. And it's just, well, I think we all need to be in black armbands tomorrow. It's so sad, and I'm just speechless. It's like I say, it's heartbreaking.
Lisa, I can tell in your voice how heartbreaking it is, and you won't be the only one feeling like that tonight. And I really appreciate you coming on this evening. And I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. And I dare say that beforehand, afterwards, it might be interesting, but during the game, I'm sure the support will be there for the players and for Wayne Rooney. But thank you for tonight.
Thank you very much.
Lisa, thank you. 0800 145 6161. Let's move it on to Simon. Simon, good evening.
Good evening, you all right?
Yes. No, I'm okay. Thank you. How are you and how do you react to tonight's news?
Angry, upset, relieved. Maybe that's one of the emotions, relief. Because it's been dragging on for years now. Well, 18 months, whatever it has been. And, a lot of questions have been asked. Nothing. But what I want to know is, where's Steve? Where's Mel? Why are they not on the show? Why are they not talking tonight? Ed mentioned it a minute ago. They put out a statement. They should be on the show talking to fans. They've not done that. It's like they've forgotten how to communicate with human. People have lost a lot of money just calling up ticket officers that aren't being answered. I know a guy, £74 his phone bill is because of this. Yet Mel's blaming it all on COVID. No, Mel, it's your fault. You're the one who spent silly money on players, not getting your money back. You took a massive gamble and it's backfired. Why are so many loans involved in running this football club? Who actually owns the football club? Is it Mel? No, it's not. But was it Mel before? There's just been absolutely nothing. They had a meeting with the supporters group, and it sounds like what he's told him was basically a load of waffle. Yet he's blaming everybody and everything else but himself. How can you do that? You've destroyed a football club. You've destroyed a founding member of the Football League. And he hasn't got the bottle to come on the air tonight and talk to us about it, apologise to us about it. His legacy at Round Derby, local boy and all that's gone, ruined in my eyes. I'm absolutely raging.
Ed, that'll be, I think, the not the main source of anger, but certainly a huge part of the annoyance from the fans is the way the club has meandered over the last couple of years without communication. And bear in mind that Mel Morris has been portrayed as a very, certainly in the early years, as an owner that had Derby County very much first and foremost. And there was lots of arguments about, well, he gambled, but owning a football club is a gamble, just to try and get the best for the club. But I must admit that the turnaround really has been quite staggering in terms of where he was in the eyes of Rams fans. Not all, I accept that, but most, to where he is now.
Yeah, I mean, you were given a free scarf and a free cup of coffee. But, if there's no football to watch because there isn't a club, it's not going to keep you warm, is it? The argument is on Twitter right now. I'm getting loads of messages of people saying, like Simon, you can hear the emotion in Simon's voice. Why is Stephen not on the radio tonight? Other people have said, I've just spoken to an emotional Mel Morris. That's great. Mel Morris said he'd talk to me tomorrow. That's fine. I'll take him at his word for that. Obviously, we've got a programme tomorrow. And I've offered him the opportunity to sit down with me before we go on air at 2:00. So hopefully he'll take that opportunity. He's not going to come on Radio Derby tonight when all the anger is flaring and the emotion is flying and answer anybody's questions. He's not going to do a live interview like that. It's just not going to happen. Although we all want it to happen, as fans want it to happen, it just doesn't work like that. So we have to wait and hear what he has to say. But it's a very difficult situation, isn't it? Because at the moment, it's gone very, very wrong and everybody wants answers. But we've got to hear the right answers, haven't we? And we can't have emotional answers.
Simon, finally, before we move it on, just your emotions tomorrow. I know tomorrow seems a long, long way away, even though it's only a few hours away. But how do you think you will be feeling when you're walking up to Pride Park, knowing that the club that existed yesterday is in a very different place to what it will be when you're heading there?
I don't know. Part of me thinks, why bother? The other part thinks, actually, no, this is who I put my money towards. I go here on a Saturday to get that relief, get that excitement. And, I love this football club. I've, Derby born and bred, supported this club since I was about 4 years old. My first game was, so that's 30 years. So I'll be behind Wayne and the players tomorrow. And I think every single one of those fans in that stadium tomorrow needs to be behind the players and Wayne tomorrow. No matter what the score is, they're going to need it tomorrow, because this is going to hit them as well as us. You mentioned it, you touched on it with Kieran about the players and the staff and all that. I've got family members that work at the club. So they're going to be emotional. Tomorrow, we need to bleed passion. We need to bleed black and white out of them stands tomorrow towards them teams. If Mel's there, I'm sure there'll be plenty of fans that will give Mel what for. But our main aim has to be them players. We had talks of do the fans protest. Last week, I think as early as last week was when he comes to Stoke, let's protest. Well, now it's a different ball game because he's gone. So if he's at the game tomorrow, I'm sure a lot of fans will let him know how they really feel. They won't be bothered about him just saying, "Oh, if you want me to go, I'll walk." Well, you've already walked, Mel. So you're going to get it all barrels blazing tomorrow. But that team needs us tomorrow. The manager needs us. The coaches need us. All the staff that are around that pitch tomorrow need us. All the staff around the ground. The guys in the shops. The ball boys. Everybody needs us tomorrow. We have to try and come together, as a club, as a family, and just see if we can get a win, just to I suppose mask the devastation that we've had today.
Simon, really appreciate it. Thank you as always, and thank you for putting your thoughts across so eloquently. 0800 145 6161 free phone number. Many more of your calls to come, but if you are just joining us, the news that Derby County are heading into administration. Let's just remind you of what has been said tonight. Ed, remind us of the statement.
Yeah, the statement came out around 8:30. The story had been bubbling, and the club responded to the advances finally after months of please come and talk to Radio Derby. So the statement came out and said that the football club has announced that the ultimate holding company of the group and all the subsidiary companies have filed notices of intention to appoint administrators. It said last week it became clear the process which was underway to identify a new buyer. I'm going to paraphrase this because there's a lot of it's very wordy for 9:40 on a Friday night. They said last week it became clear that the process to find a new purchaser for the club, it's not going to happen over the near term, despite a number of negotiations with credible parties. We knew that the negotiations had continued for a long time, didn't we? They've blamed COVID-19 and the pandemic having a severe impact on revenues and profits of all its businesses. The club had been unable to service its day-to-day financial obligations. The directors had no choice to make the tough decision and take this action to protect the club. They also say that the irony is that at this time, club's financial forecasts show the emergence of a financially sustainable picture if COVID hadn't happened, but it did. However, the impact of COVID and the unpredictability it's created is too much of a strain. The pandemic and lockdown tightened its grip. The revenues of the club and cash flow took a £20 million hit. We've heard that figure before. This season, COVID continued to have a negative effect on the club's revenues. Football had only been able to marginally reduce its cost base. It talked about not being able to furlough playing staff, which is obviously a sad indictment of football in this country. And just that's the way it is. It continues to talk about COVID lockdown, meaning that they were unable to have face-to-face meetings with potential purchasers who couldn't visit the stadium or the training ground. The planned sale of the club and the stadium that was due to close in January 2020 collapsed when the EFL was coerced into challenging the stadium sale transaction. So basically, that first sale collapsed because, shall we say, those people who wanted Derby in the dock over selling the stadium to Mel Morris, selling the stadium to itself. That's the reason that fell down. So, they're pointing the finger at other clubs in the Championship there, blaming other clubs for that one. A lot of the stuff you've already talked about with Kieran. I mean, I can just say that they do stress how devastating it is to be forced into this position. The owner, members of the board and staff are all Derby County supporters, continuing to work under the stewardship of the administrators to help facilitate every effort to find a purchaser. Once those have been found, those administrators have been appointed in the coming days. It is customary for them to communicate with staff and supporters about timescales and processes to seek a purchaser and address creditor concerns. So the upshot of this is we'll probably find out more what's going on with Derby County now it's in administration than we have for 2 years.
Yeah, it just shouldn't have come to this. It really shouldn't have
No.
to be forced into a situation where this is the end result. And there's a line in it that says, "We know this situation will raise concerns among our supporters." I mean, that must be one of the most
Chris,
understated sentences I think I've ever heard.
Chris, can you hear me,
Yeah.
Chris? I'm just going to read you the EFL statement, which has
Yes,
just
we
come
have an
out.
EFL statement. Go for it. Yes.
Yes, we do. Let me read that to you. With confirmation that Derby County Football Club have filed a notice of intention to appoint administrators, the EFL can tonight confirm that the club will be subject to an insolvency event under the terms of the EFL's regulations. As a result, the club faces a 12-point deduction. Once the EFL has received formal notification of the application, the deduction will be applied. The EFL will in due course engage in discussions with the relevant parties with the aim of achieving a successful outcome for the long-term future of the club. The league is disappointed with comments made by the club in respect of COVID, lending facilities. The EFL entered into a debt raise. The EFL entered into a debt raise to provide its clubs with access to funds that would support them in dealing with the impact of COVID. And as with any loan, this was subject to a time frame and eligibility criteria which Derby County were unable to meet. So going back to Derby's statement, they blamed the EFL, didn't they, for not being able to get that loan? I think that's what Kieran was saying, if he's still with you. And now Derby County and now the EFL are saying, well, Derby didn't pass the eligibility criteria. So again, punches being thrown, but supporters now know that it is going to happen. A 12-point deduction will happen, which means it's probably back to Division 3.
But yes, and I don't know. Even despite all going on, there seems to be still lots of punches, as you say, being thrown between Derby and the EFL. Kieran, I think you're still with us. Could you respond to that final paragraph from the EFL? The league is disappointed with the comments made by the club. They're suggesting then that the parameters of the loan that they suggested, even Derby weren't able to meet that, which presumably wouldn't have been that drastic because it was there to make sure that the impact of COVID wasn't so severe.
That's correct. The EFL cannot lend money without any conditions. No lender does that. So they wouldn't have been particularly adverse, but it does appear that Mel Morris appears to think he's been quoted saying I'm the enemy state of the EFL in the past, and playing the victim card. There's no evidence of that at all. And with regards to the club statement, with regards to the EFL was coerced into the charges with regards to the ground sale. There were actually two charges, so that they were successful on one, and with regards to the other, that's the present one that's still continuing. If Derby hadn't decided to use creative accounting as a means of trying to circumvent the profitability and sustainability rules, then they probably wouldn't be in this position today because they would have had to have cut their cloth accordingly in years gone by.
Let's return to the calls, shall we? Dan is up next. Evening, Dan.
Evening, how are you?
Well, considering, yeah, okay. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. I know a lot of what I wanted to say has kind of already been said with the previous callers you've had on this evening. It's a feeling somewhere between kind of numb and angry, if I'm honest with you. Just got the lack of communication, I guess. I read the statement when it first got released by the club, and Mel comes across as if he's blaming everyone else but himself. The statement come across as quite COVID heavy, when I think to other football clubs, even in leagues below the Championship, who haven't had the issues we've been suffering with, if you like. I then kind of looked on the field matters as well, and think to likes of Wayne Rooney, who's been doing a decent job under the circumstances we've been in, and what the cards that he's had to play with, or the cards he's been handed, if you like. And I can't see him sticking around in League One, so it's just a massive frustration. I'm going to be at the game tomorrow, which was kind of planned all along, even before the statement come out this evening. What I'm curious to see is what the atmosphere is going to be like. As the previous callers have said, I can see the fans getting behind the players when the game's actually being played. But beforehand and afterwards, it's going to be very interesting to see what the atmosphere is going to be like.
What do you think it's going to be like, Dan? What's your anticipation?
I was speaking with family members and friends about it. My father, who's a Derby County fan, he's born and bred in Derby from Little Over. I was kind of brought up supporting Derby. So I said to my old man that I think it's going to be quite toxic. Whether you'll see kind of protests, I don't know. I don't know what you guys think. Do you think Mel will attend the game tomorrow? Or on the back of this news, do you think he'll stay away?
I'll be honest. I'll be surprised. I'll be surprised if he's there tomorrow. I don't know. I don't know. And hopefully Mel is true to his word and speaks with Ed beforehand, and we'll get a slightly better idea of what's going on. But Dan, when you look at what's gone before, and hand on heart, did you ever anticipate that Derby would get to this point?
I know it's always been a possibility. Did I want it to? Of course not. But it's a frustration, isn't it? More than anything else. I know they've had people interested in buying the club. I know it comes with its complications, but I don't think any fan or really. I know Mel has come out in a statement saying that he didn't want it to come to this stage, but surely he's been in charge for a numerous amount of years, isn't he? And I know he's been looking to sell the club for a while as well. Granted, we've had COVID, but if he didn't want it to get to this stage, surely it's got to have been other ways, you know. Surely this has been last resort.
Dan, really appreciate you giving us a call. Thank you very much for your thoughts this evening. 0800 145 6161. You won't be surprised to hear we are getting absolutely hundreds of messages through, and I'll try and go through as many as I possibly can in the next few moments. You can text Derby to 81333 and then your message, and you can also find us on Twitter at BBC Derby Sport. Let's go and move it away from Dan and go to Saab, who's next up. Saab, evening to you.
Hi guys, devastated with the news, but can't say I'm surprised given the governance we've had at the club. And Kieran referred to it, and it's laughable that they're saying the board. There is no board at Derby County. The board is Mel Morris and Stephen Pearce, who's a yes man. He's supposed to be a professional manager, managing finances, managing the club on a professional level, to give advice and to take accountability. He's taken no accountability. Stephen Pearce, professionally. Mel Morris, yes, I know he's the owner. He's the main target, clearly. But we have to recognise there is no board. And the reason why we've got into this mess is there's been no board, no governance, no challenge, no decisions being taken in any sensible way. As Kieran's mentioned there, the Frank Lampard years, the Koku years, what the hell were we thinking as a club spending that money at that time where we knew we couldn't afford it? My concern now is, well, I would hope that we were able to clear the decks of the points, clear the decks financially, and move the club forward. But thinking about it, another question for Kieran here, really. We're talking about the accounts submitted for 16-17 and 17-18. I want to know, and the new owners will want to know, what about the Frank Lampard legacy of 18-19 and 19-20? There's more points and more penalties in that. What sane person would buy the club without knowing what's happening in those future years? Yes, we're going down to League One. Yes, we can take that. Let's rebuild the club. Let's have rebirth. But I think we need clarity on those other years of overspending, complete overspending, and the chickens have come home to roost. The only positive I can see from this is we can clear the decks with the EFL for all of our accounts and enable the new owners to move forward in League One on a more sustainable footing. So my question to Kieran, because he said he's tweeted on his tweets, he says all profit and sustainability breaches from 2016 onwards will carry over to new owners. So how do we manage that with regard to the future penalties we're going to get for the future years for the overspends we've already had on top of the overspends they're talking about now for the previous accounts? That's my key question, because without solving that, we're not going to be able to move the club forward.
Kieran?
Well, I agree entirely. It needs to be resolved. I think Mel Morris was refusing to come to a settlement with the EFL. Now the administrators will take a far more pragmatic approach. They have a business to sell, and they will have to give whoever's going to buy that business as much information as possible, and that information has to be as accurate as possible. So therefore it's in their interest to agree a settlement with the EFL as soon as they can. But they will have their work cut out because there's so much else to do in the early days of the administration.
But what about the
So,
Frank Lampard years, though? That's what my concern is. We spent massively. We released a whole load of players that has yet to come on the books. How are we going to manage that as a club? How are we going to and the new owners and the points deduction? We want points deductions in League One. No, we don't. So how do we square that circle? That's my worry.
Well, the club will have produced accounts internally, so it should be relatively straightforward for the administrators to summarise those, present them to the EFL, and come to an agreement as to where the club stands. Now, if they are going to be found guilty for 2016-18, if we use what happened at Birmingham City as a precedent, effectively the clock was reset for 2019 onwards. So that could be the case with Derby County as well.
Well, I think that's what we need. We need something that's sustainable. Sorry, Chris.
No. Floor's yours.
Yeah. No, I was just saying. I think that we've got to try and look forward. I know it's a challenging night tonight. We're all devastated. We've got to try and think, well, okay, what sensibly can we do? We need to support the club. We need to try and get through this season as best we can, supporting the club, putting ourselves in the best position. We're a big club. We are, if the way you have the right owners with the right governance, with the right board making the right decisions. No, we're not wanting to go promotion straight away. We want a club that's just going to be stable and to be able to be reliable and to treat fans reliably. And I think that if we can get a sensible financial arrangement with the EFL, let's be honest, the EFL had it in for Mel as well. There's a war going on from day one when Mel was chastising the EFL, and likewise, they're both as bad as each other as far as I'm concerned. But if we've got that new ownership or the administrator agreeing a stability, a way of getting the club on a stable footing so that we're not entering into relegation at any other stage or any financial issues at any other stage, and that's going to help us. That's going to give us as fans something to cling on to. Clean the slate, clear the slate. We're not going to have a billionaire taking overs like Leicester and Southampton and all that. We realise that. Let's stabilise ourselves in League One. Let's build on that, and let's bring the proper Derby County back, grassroots and all, back to the club and back to the fans.
Saab, that is an incredibly level-headed way of looking at it, and kudos to you for being so level-headed in a time where I'm sure many people just can't look forward at the moment. They're just too wrapped up and devastated with the news today. But thank you very much for getting in touch. Very quickly, Ed, before we move it on, it does feel a little premature to start thinking, well, I wonder what the future will hold, but naturally thoughts will turn to that. And maybe the hope will be that in however many months, dare I say it, years, this will be 17th of September 2021 was the lowest of the low, but then it turned into something that can grow the club and turned into something that was much better than what went before it.
Look at Leicester City, Chris. I mean, that's a dream, isn't it? What they did. They went through this whole situation, and then these rules were brought into place because of what they did. But, there is a way back from this. And as I mentioned earlier, as long as there is a football team to kick a ball around somewhere on a grass pitch in Derby, the supporters will have their fill, and that is the most important thing. As long as there is a club in any guise, the football club is the most important thing. Owners come, owners go, managers, players, they come and go. But as long as there is a football club for generations of fans to support, to be passed down, that is the most important thing. And the atmosphere tomorrow will be electric because, yes, the fans will be cross. Mel Morris won't be there. They'll sing about him. They'll tirade abuse at him. But that's immaterial because the players need the support. The manager needs the support because although the EFL have confirmed -12, has a club ever got away from -12 and actually stayed up? I mean, it's an absolute, impossible ask, but the team need the support to go down fighting.
Well, Wigan very nearly did, didn't they, a couple of seasons ago?
Yeah.
But I'd be amazed if it has happened. And as we know, it's 12 points now, but it could be much worse than that as we move forward. We are continuing your calls. Let me read through some of your messages, though, because they continue to come in apace. Danny says, we're in such a mess, a club this size, this fan base, this amazing clubs. It's only the fans who suffer in this, but I will still support Derby. Mickey says, absolutely gutted with the club I followed for over 30 years. Feels like the world has stopped. I'm lost for words, this should be something to fight for on the pitch. So hoping for a good response tomorrow from the boys. Up the mighty Rams. No name on this text says, as someone who left the club a few months ago, it is truly heartbreaking for the staff who are left there. There are some genuinely great staff who work behind the scenes, and this isn't their fault. And I've mentioned this so many times. Yeah, I think all our hearts go out to those that, like you and I, are just trying to earn a decent living, and completely out of their control, they are now left wondering about the futures, and that it just isn't fair. That is the problem sometimes with football clubs. Your future is left to either 11 men on the field or 4 or 5 men in a boardroom. You could do your job brilliantly, and yet you could still find yourself out of it because of things completely out of your control. Sam says, devastating news. Never thought I'd see the club in this state in my lifetime. One thing we as fans need to remember, it's not the staff's fault. They follow the orders of the powers that be like a normal workplace. I do understand protests may be happening tomorrow, but let's show some respect to ticket office and admin workers, concession stand workers and stewards, etc., as ultimately their jobs are possibly on the line in already difficult times. And Kat finally for now says, we have been there in 1983 and came through that. We can do it again. The fans will keep this club going. 0800 145 6161, free phone number 81333 Derby at the front of your message, at BBC Derby Sport on Twitter, and Emergency Sportscene talking on BBC Radio Derby, reacting to the news that Derby County are heading for administration. Let's speak to a man who we've spoken to quite often recently, Jim Wheeler, chair of the Rams Trust. Jim, evening to you.
Hi, Chris. Hi, Ed.
Hi, Jim. Thanks for being with us. Well, a simple question, as I've asked to all of our callers and contributors. Sum up how you're feeling currently.
Well, my initial reaction was disbelief, to be honest. I never thought Mel would allow this to happen, because I do genuinely believe, and even in the statement they put out today, they've said they are true Derby County fans through and through. Now, this is a choice Mel Morris has taken. He is not skint. He could afford to continue to subsidise the club until a takeover went through. I'm quite surprised that he didn't want to see through his argument with the EFL, to be honest, because he's basically given up on that one, where he and when he met with us a month or so ago, he put forward a number of very valid points, some of which are included in that statement they put out today, although we weren't allowed to say them. The EFL has not been supportive of the club, has seemed to have had a vendetta against it, etc., etc. And I genuinely think, based on the evidence that he has shown or said that he has, we could have got that 9-point potential penalty reduced. I was honestly expecting it to come out at about 5 or 6. And he's now given up on that. And on top of that, we've got the 12-point penalty. So the 5, 6, 12, whatever it is, really is irrelevant now, because whatever it is, we're still going to go down. I mean, we can have a really good run at it. If Wayne gets some sort of fantastic performances from the players, we might get back to 0 by Christmas. But yeah, it's still not feasible. In which case, and I'm sure that also did, just to reiterate Saab's point from earlier, I'm sure those negotiations included the later accounts as well. It's not just the 3 years. It was take this penalty and then we'll wipe the slate clean going forward. So that bit doesn't concern me. The points, we are where we are now. But this is Mel's decision. And the only reason that I can see that he would have made this decision is because one of the buyers, probably the main one that he was talking to, has pulled out. That's the only justification I can see for this. All the guff about COVID, the EFL, etc., is irrelevant. We were having to subsidise the club to keep it going before COVID even started. In fact, you may recall there was a period where we were penalised because Mel didn't transfer the money quickly enough to pay the wages. I think it was around about December, January 2019, 2020. So right. Even at that point, they could have said, we cannot meet our outstanding obligations, therefore we go into admin. He chose not to do that. He has continued to subsidise the club until now. And so now he's made that decision. And the only reason that he could have done that now is because he sees no light at the end of the tunnel.
Ed?
Jim, can I ask you 2 questions? This week, there was supposed to be a supporter charter group meeting. I think it was Wednesday. What happened to that?
It was cancelled. And to be fair to the club, it was cancelled not because of the club's side. It was because a number of the supporter representatives, not me, I hasten to add, I still wanted to go, were unable to attend. And that may actually be COVID related. I really don't know. And to be fair to them, I had a really good discussion over email with the supporters liaison officer, and I had a call with the ticket office manager, and both of them were really keen to address the concerns that we had, and have addressed some concerns that were raised by Rams Trust members that I was going to take to that meeting.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? That you managed to get actually somebody to talk to you about that stuff when, no disrespect, we have a wider pull, don't we? And then,
to be fair,
it's frustrating.
That was purely operational. So it was to talk about ticket office. It was to talk about the turnstiles. I mean, not the board stuff. I.e., Mel and Stephen were never going to attend that meeting.
The other question is, they had a charter meeting that you all went to and had to sign NDAs, didn't you? Non-disclosure agreements right at the start. And we know all about that because we spoke to you about it. Now the club's gone into administration. Do those non-disclosure agreements still hold, or are you able to talk freely? Because obviously there's going to be a lot of stuff that was said in that meeting that is null and void now.
My understanding is that it was still a legally binding agreement, and it was produced by Mel's lawyer. So I don't think, well, let's put it this way. I'm not prepared to take the risk to say I can now tell you everything that was in that meeting. But there are a number of things that at the time we were told we could not disclose that have subsequently been released either via the media, because presumably somebody's spoken to them, and I'm guessing it's from the club, or in the actual statement that they put out tonight. So a lot of the stuff in that meeting was Mel justifying the issues with the EFL and putting his side of the story as to why he didn't feel that we should get any points penalty whatsoever. As far as he was concerned, he has still done what was best for the club at every point and has followed precedent with the EFL. So I actually do have, unless he was totally lying, which I don't believe is the case, a lot of what he said, I do have a lot of sympathy with him in terms of the way that the EFL have treated him and Derby County and supporters. And I actually even brought this up before that meeting. I brought this up with the government, with Tracy Crouch and with the Football Supporters Association in the fan-led review, to say that the EFL are not fit for purpose. They are not consistent in what they are doing in terms of managing the game in this country, and we need to have an independent regulator. And actually the EFL regulations and what they have tried to do to Derby County has led us to the point that we are now. Because just even
just one
just
more
very quickly, if you can, Ed, because we have to move on.
I'm led to believe that it's either Wednesday or Thursday was a deadline for a takeover or something to be sorted for a takeover to happen that involves Americans and people who can run a stadium with a roof on, that transformation. I'm led to believe that deadline passed this week, and this is why we're in this situation now. Do you know anything about that, Jim?
No. I mean, I've heard rumours, yes. I've probably seen similar documents that you have. And yeah, I mean, that's the same interpretation I have of this, that Mel saw some light at the end of the tunnel that has now closed, and therefore he's taken the next step and just said, look, I can't continue to do this. Now, the problem is that this is now his legacy forever. This is all Mel Morris will ever be remembered for, is choosing to ruin Derby County.
Jim, before we let you go, as part of going into administration, there's now this 28-day window to allow Supporters Trust to put together a potential buyout. Wishful thinking, I suppose. But what do you make of? Yeah, but what do you make of that?
Well, yes, it is absolutely the right thing to happen. We need to get our act together in terms of finding out if there is anybody who would be interested in working with the trust. Because this is the other thing that we're talking about here. There's the point deduction, which means we are almost certainly going to get relegated. Now, the other side of it is, what is the outstanding debt that the club has? Because, yes, we've gone into administration, but we will still be liable for all outstanding debts to HMRC. We will still be liable to all outstanding debts that are football debts in order to stay and continue to play in the league. I suspect this hasn't actually written off very much debt at all by doing this. All it's meant is that Mellis does not have to continue to put money in going forward. And then the third most important thing, and I don't know whether Kieran or anybody else can answer this, is where this leaves us with the stadium. Because if somebody is going to take on Derby County as an entity with a definite relegation on the cards and significant debts to HMRC and football clubs, and still doesn't even have a stadium, and potentially has to pay 60 million to MSD or to Mel or whatever that might be, that's a hell of a sell to anybody. And
yeah. Jim, say that. I mean, Kieran, I know we did briefly mention the stadium earlier. I mean, a lot earlier, almost an hour ago now. So there will be people, of course, joining at us at all sorts of different times. So just quickly recap what you can tell us about what happens to the stadium now.
Well, the stadium is owned by a separate company. But if you take a look at the press release from the club, it does say that the ultimate holding company of Derby County Football Club Limited, which also owns the stadium, will also be going into administration. So therefore, it will be an asset which can be sold by the administrators, but MSD Holdings have a charge over the key assets, which clearly will be the stadium. So they are going to have the first entitlement to the sale proceeds, and if there is anything left over from the sale of the stadium as part of the administrators' selling of the club, then that would have to go to other creditors, such as the football creditors and HMRC, who would be next in line.
Kieran, appreciate that. Jim, and thank you for your call as well. It's always good to chat, and we'll see what the coming days bring. 0800 145 6161. Moving on very quickly. Kieran, just one more to throw at you. Everyone was dreading the A word, and that's happened tonight. There will be a few out there dreading the L word as well, given what we've seen happen to other clubs. What would have to happen for that to be a possibility? Are we close to that, or is that still unrealistic in terms of potentially Derby County being liquidated?
I think that at present it's highly unlikely, and the reason for that is liquidation only arises when you feel that the sale of the club's assets on an individual basis would bring in more money than the sale of Derby County and all the associated companies as a going concern as a business. So, normally an administrator would be looking to sell the business. It still has a brand. It still has, Derby County fans are in love. That you fall in love with the shirt. That's your loyalty to the shirt. It's not to the owners. It's not to the. It's not even to the players and managers. They're transient. So whilst Derby County still have the thick end of 30,000 people a week, desperate to attend at Pride Park, I think it's a very saleable asset, and therefore it has some appeal, and somebody would be willing to pay for it. So I'm positive that it can be sold in its present form, and liquidation is a remote possibility.
Yeah, and I can't remember who said it. It was someone of the current, current board of I guess the old board now, who said that Derby County existed 100 years ago, and they will continue to exist in 100 years' time. It may have been Stephen Pearce, the club's CEO, that told us that during the COVID pandemic. And let's absolutely hope he's right on that. Let's go to Ollie. Hi, Ollie.
Hi there. It's an embarrassing night, isn't it? It's an embarrassing time to be a Derby County fan. I'm absolutely ashamed at the way the club's been run over the last few years. I'm ashamed to tell people that I am a Derby fan because of the appalling way that Mel Morris has run this club. Even in statements that we're seeing tonight and the bickering between him and the EFL, it's just appalling. We're in a position where we seem to have no bargaining. Yeah, we're going to stand there and say that this is an issue, this is an issue, this is an issue. And actually, the issue is one person at the top. And I spent the last couple of years trying to defend him, saying actually he's the man who's putting money into the club. He's the one who's still paying people's wages. But I think it's got to a point now where that's run out. He's he still stands this position that everything is everybody else's fault. And I work with a lot of other football fans, Leeds fans, who are sat there tonight rubbing their hands together, laughing at our position. It's embarrassing, but I really hope that in such awful times that people will come together, that as a fan base, I think Kieran mentioned it there, players, managers, owners, they're all transient, but we're the ones who go there on a Saturday and support the team, wear the colours, and that's important. I don't have a ticket for tomorrow. I don't have a season ticket because I used to work Saturdays and I never renewed, and I'm glad that I didn't renew because I know obviously other supporters are not having their money back and that sort of thing with season tickets, but I'm going to buy a ticket for tomorrow because I want to support the 11 players on the pitch and Wayne Rooney, and I want to support them and the other fans who put their hands in their pockets to go to games. We went to West Brom on Tuesday nights, and I think Sky Sports mentioned it in some of their TV coverage that there's this idea, isn't there, that everybody's against Derby County, and that fires up the players, it fires up the supporters. And then when you go and get a point against the league leaders, it means so much. I remember standing there in the crowd, hugging my brother, celebrating that we got a point away at West Brom, because it feels like the world's against us. And actually, it's not, is it? It's not against us. We are the masters of our own destiny, and unfortunately, over the last 3, 4, 5 years, however long this saga seems to have continued for, that it's people are against one man seemingly, and he just doesn't want to back down. It's been really refreshing to hear so many calls tonight to people who are very level-headed, who are looking to the future and saying actually that this isn't the end of Derby County. Of course it's not, but it might just be the end of this tenure. And fingers crossed that it is, because I don't know how much more the fans can put up with this.
Ollie, that is a terrific call. That is an absolutely terrific call. And I can't disagree with anything you have said there. And you have put across your point so brilliantly. And I think you speak for so many fans when you say exactly as you've said there. And Ed, you can relate to this. Fans just want a football club they can be proud of. The emotion that you go through watching your club, the emotion that Derby fans would have felt leaving the Hawthorns. We were both there. We saw it was a point against West Brom on a chilly September evening early on in the season, and yet you got the euphoria. Yeah. You understood it. And this is what the fans want. They don't want to be concerning themselves with off-field issues, and of course they have to now because of the way the club is. But at the end of the day, it is just about the community and the feeling that you have for watching a football club and loving a football club.
The beating heart. If you go down to the baseball ground now, it's really odd to see the houses built on the baseball ground, because you'd think that nothing actually ever happened there. But you have in the back of your mind and your heart the fact that the club moved and it's just over there. And they're still over there and they'll still be over there. But, COVID has knocked a lot of people's livelihoods and lives, real people who don't earn stupid amounts of money or have it in the bank or all that kind of stuff, or businesses or whatever. They don't have that money to gamble. This is all they have. They have their money that they can put food on the table, they can pay their mortgage or their rent, and the money that they can spend on match tickets. Match tickets for Sheffield United away, which are £37 per fan. That's ridiculous. Mm. That's what the game has come to. And that's somebody's hard-earned cash. And they will go. I've seen tweets today. Alex Stewart, I think she tweeted, got me ticket for Sheffield United. She's going. It's 37 quid out of her wage. It's ridiculous. As long as there is a club to support, they will do it. They will find the money. They will keep being bled dry by the game. And unfortunately, this has happened to clubs before. Do you know what really upset me, actually? Oliver, my eldest, said to me, are we going to go the way as Bury? Who knows? I couldn't tell.
Well, the question I asked Kieran and about exactly that. And yeah, it sounds like that is not a possibility, given, as Kieran has mentioned, that there is still, the club is still, take away all the problems it has currently, the club is still a very attractive proposition. Let's get a player's perspective, a former player's perspective, someone who spends a lot of time with us and has a lot of love for the club, I know, former Rams winger Jamie Ward. Jamie, evening to you. Clearly not the situation that we want to be discussing, that we want to be talking about, but just try and, if you can, tell us what on earth will be flying around the old WhatsApp group with the Derby players currently. How are they going to clear their heads to play football tomorrow?
Well, good evening first and foremost. Like you say, not the news that the fans or anyone involved with the club actually wanted to hear. But I think as the group of players, yeah, your head's going to be a little bit scrambled. But now you know the club they're going to be hit with obviously the points deduction, and it's important to obviously try and keep your focus. Easier said than done, don't get me wrong, but you've got to keep your focus, and now you've got to do everything in your power to try and claw points back and catch the teams above you, which obviously there's 23 teams going to be above them once the points deduction comes in. So if you can just claw away at that, and obviously to stay in that league, they need promotion form, which, looking at the team, I don't think they've got it in them to actually go on a promotion kind of run just to survive. So it's frustrating. It's obviously worrying times for everyone in the background as well, because obviously people will lose their jobs. Not the players, because they'll still be there. They'll still get all the money come the end of the season. But the people behind the scenes, I've said it before, they're the ones who are going to lose jobs. They're going to have problems paying bills and all of that side of it. So yeah, it's scary when you actually look at it. I think no one actually ever expected it. I know it was spoke about, but I don't think you actually expect it when you look at a club like Derby County. It should never happen to them, really.
Yeah, it's galling when you put it like that, and we know that it's everyday folk that are very much affected through no fault of their own, as mentioned earlier as well. Kieran Maguire is leaving us. Kieran, thank you very much in fact, huge thanks for spending so much of your evening with us. It's almost an hour and 20 minutes, but thank you for that, and I'm sure we'll speak again soon.
Sure, thank you.
Kieran Maguire, their football finance expert, attempting to make some sense with what's going on this evening. Jamie, and how are you feeling? You've spoken to us about how the players might be going about their business tomorrow. But you're still local in the area. You're playing for Buxton, a club not too far away from here. You spent many a happy year at Derby County. You're very much, very fondly regarded by the Derby fans, and you have a lot of love for them as well. So how are you feeling?
Yeah, well, I'm disappointed, to be honest. Once I've seen the news, Ed messaged me, actually. Have you seen the news? So it's the only time Ed messages me when he wants to get me on the radio. But it's obviously it's disappointing. A club that have built up a good reputation with a good relationship with the fans, and just to see them where they are now, from where we was obviously on the verge of the Premiership to obviously basically going to end up in League One. So yeah, it's heartbreaking for the fans. It's never a good feeling, because most people you talk to in the area are Derby fans, and it always comes back round to what's going on at Derby. And unfortunately, I think this obviously shows you that it's been mismanaged for many years, and this is the consequences.
Well, yeah, and I can't help but think back at the various playoff campaigns and how close Derby have been. I mean, what's at 2014? I don't want to mention 2014, but it just shows how close you can get, and things could have been completely different. Doesn't excuse, of course, anything that's happened over the past few years or so. But if you gamble with a football club, it can go horribly wrong, as we've seen tonight. Jamie, appreciate it. I'm sure we'll speak again soon, and hopefully about football matters on the field rather than off the field.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you very much. Take care.
Cheers, Jamie. Former Rams winger Jamie Ward. Let's move it on to someone who I spoke to mere hours ago. And there we were discussing trivial matters, as it turned out. Ryan Dilks from the Second Tier podcast. Ryan, good evening.
Good evening.
Well, I mean, here we are a few hours later, and I don't think, clearly no one was expecting such devastating news to come out this evening, and so soon after we said goodbye for the Sportscene preview, talking about Stoke City. So how are you feeling?
How am I feeling? Angry. Then I saw the administration. Well, I was angry against the whole Mo Morris regime as a whole. And then when I saw the announcements, I was furious. And then I actually read it, and I mean, that statement is a kick in the teeth to every single Derby fan who has bought a season ticket, is going to the game tomorrow, has been to a game in the past many years, and just blaming everyone else but Mel Morris and the board. It's pathetic. It is nothing short of pathetic. Blaming coronavirus, blaming the EFL, it's just take some accountability. We've been asking for communication for the past few weeks, few months, and this is not what we meant, where you're just blatantly lying to Derby fans across the world. It wasn't, the EFL who said, oh, let's spend £80 million in transfer fees since 2015. It wasn't coronavirus that said, let's spend 50 million of that on Nick Blackman, Jacob Butterfield and Akechi Anya. It's just pathetic that I'm shaking a bit here because I'm just so angry about everything that I've been hearing from the Derby fans tonight. And it's good to hear that everyone is now, in the same corner, that Mel Morris is completely to blame for this and no one's being fooled by this lousy statement that's been put out. And I think the one thing that I will say is congratulations, Mel Morris, because my co-host on the second tier, Justin Peach, was saying the other day, Mel Morris is the worst owner Derby County have ever had. At the time, I thought to myself, that's a bit harsh, three amigos, but now whenever anyone talks about it, I don't think there's any argument, because whenever someone says three amigos, you can just say administration, relegation, pretty much confirmed.
Ed, that is well, two things. Firstly, how surprised are you that there isn't a more conciliatory tone in that statement? Because as Ryan says, as many have pointed out, that there's a lot of blame being thrown elsewhere. And secondly, I think I've said to you many a time actually that it feels that Mel Morris was very much Derby County through and through. He spoke with such pride about owning the football club. He did so much for the community. We know that he spent lots of money. He's donated lots of things. He's great for charity. Yet that'll be completely forgotten. The legacy is this. This is what, when people say, however many years down the line, Mel Morris, they won't remember all the good times. They'll remember this day.
They will. And I just wonder also how much it will affect his other businesses, because obviously this is a very, very, very high profile failure in business, isn't it? And there are a number of points that we could all make about the spending since 2014-15. Is Wayne Rooney on, what, £100,000 a week as manager? I mean, that's obviously a strange contract in itself. High-profile managers, Frank Lampard, his team, player signings, all that kind of stuff. Fingers have been pointed at people who have left the club, who have been sacked by the club, who have been taken to court by the club. Everything is their fault. They did this, they did that. It's come down to it that because there are no answers, because of the silence, there are no answers. Everybody just presumes that it's the current ownership group's fault. And until we find out the answers, the proper answers, until the club are willing to take questions from journalists, then we just won't know. And fans will continue to point the finger. And that's just the way it is.
Final few moments of the programme then. Let's speak to Deep. Hello, Deep.
Hi. Yeah, it's sad, but I think we'll move on. I'm not going to blame Mel for everything. He's put 200 million in. And he's trying to do his best. He's human and he's made a mistake, and Derby County will still continue long after he's gone. But I did want to raise one point, the EFL Supporters Charter. And if you go on the website, it says the EFL is committed to providing excellent service to its club supporters and stakeholders. I've never seen that in any club, whether it's ours or Wigan or Leicester or whatever. I've never seen them do that. I would have thought it'd be in their interest to make a great club like Derby stay in business. And I'm not a great believer in financial fair play either. I think it should be a free market economy, which used to be, decades ago, and clubs survived. So I don't put the whole blame on Mel, although I think he made mistakes. But I think the EFL have got some things to answer to, especially delaying this 9-point penalty we're supposed to. If they were so much in the right and they were so convinced that we'd broken the law, then why not just issue it out?
instead of trying to negotiate it. So I don't think they've come out of it particularly well, and I don't particularly like the way that they run the leagues. I think their TV deal, for instance, could have been far better than the ones they negotiated. So I think that they ought to be held to account as well.
Deep, appreciate your thought. Thank you very much for that. And that pretty much takes us to our time limit. Ed, final 30 seconds. I wonder, you wonder how many years down the line you look back and you'll look back at this day and think, well, that was the day that it all went horribly wrong, but it was the day that something better emerged.
Chris, we've been wanting the end of this whole saga for such a long time. Supporters have wanted just an end to it so that they can get on with their lives as Derby County supporters. Today is the first day of the rest of their lives, the rest of Derby County's history. And we must focus on that. And we must focus on the team and Wayne Rooney and the players who will go out against Stoke tomorrow and give their best and give their all. And if you're going to Pride Park tomorrow, which you should, and tickets are on sale online till 1 o'clock, get out there, cheer them on, suck the ball into the back of the net and wear your badge with pride, because that's what they deserve.
Ed, really appreciate you giving us your evening. Thank you very much, and really appreciate all of your, hundreds of texts, and apologies, we just didn't have the time to get through them all. Thank you for all your calls as well, and thank you for Kieran Maguire for trying to put some sense on what has been undoubtedly a tumultuous day in Derby County's history. And yeah, as trivial as it is to say, we're back tomorrow for a football match. And we'll have it live here on BBC Radio Derby. Sportscene from 2, Derby County against Stoke City, also following Burton Albion and their trip to Crewe in League One. Understandably, much, much more on this in tomorrow's breakfast show from 6 a.m. But from Chris Coles and the rest of the BBC Radio Derby sport team, undoubtedly a sad day for this great football club. But one thing is for sure, it will absolutely rise again. Thank you very much for spending your time with us this evening, and we'll speak tomorrow. Bye for now.